God is not like a Prius. Every time an atheist goes to bed and falls asleep peacefully, they're admitting God exists. This is Wretched Radio. No, they aren't saying I believe in God, but their actions demonstrate they recognize they don't have to worry about the sun rising the next day. I don't think there's many people, if any at all, that are ever concerned about that. Why? Day after day, season after season, the sun comes flying up, and we know, it is well with the world. Why does that happen? You see, if you don't have an authority who puts up speeding signs, you can go as fast as you want to. But when an authority determines this is how fast you will go and no further, puts up a sign and has the power to enforce it, then you better stick within the laws. And the same concept applies to looking at nature. There are laws that govern the process. And there is an authority who stands behind them and is able to enforce them. Without that, then we wouldn't have a consistent sunrise. It would go the sun, or we would go flinging off someplace. But we don't. Why? Not only the constancy of the rising and setting of the sun, how's about the exact right amount of gravitational pull distance required for us to just spin the way we do without going woo like a yo-yo without a string? Because God controls, rules nature by the word of his power. And he is never diminished for doing so. He doesn't run out and need a recharge. God is not like a Prius. I think is that the battery operated car, Prius? I think that's
pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much. What's the
Tesla?
That's the one right there.
Yeah.
You know, those people, I don't know if you know this, Jimmy, they're very special.
What?
They get the better parking places and they get to juice up their cars.
Yeah.
While we circle the lot, because all we want to do is just poison the mother. God doesn't run out of gas. Consider the sun, the fury of the sun. How does that continue to burn? Natural processes. There must be a power behind it, and that power is God. And that is a bite of information that we would do well to share with those who make accusations, specifically scientific accusations, against Christianity. Dr. Jason Lisle, who has written a book on logical fallacies, presenting a lecture at a Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, of all places. Jason Lisle, speaking of the Missouri Synod, not to have a synapse or anything, this morning was listening to, it was from Concordia Publishing, was the best version I could find. There weren't a lot of great ones. What God ordains is always good. What God ordains is always good. Every single verse, I think we've read it before here on Wretched, it just reminds us that we can rest no matter what happens. If your day is filled with dread, God ordains it, and it's always good. And then you and I all we need to do is just recline into that. Just rest into that. You got a speeding ticket because you just weren't paying attention. God ordained that. It's for your good. You're either going to trust that and rest in that, or you're going to kick against it, not believe him, and be miserable. It's a pretty simple option. The trick, of course, is just resting in that. Fascinating thing happened to me this last weekend. I sent out a 4-minute snippet of a new TV series that we're working on called Transformed. It is a show about biblical counseling, showing people actually getting counsel from a biblical counselor. Dr. Greg Gifford at the Masters University, he's the fellow who leads the counseling. Dale Johnson from the Association of Certified Biblical Counselors is the chalk talker in the series. and you will see people who are struggling with issues that either you or somebody you know has. There was a young man in this episode of the 4-minute clip that I sent out to 15 friends. Hey, take a look at this. Tell me what you think about this. Are we on the right track with this? And this particular fellow was transparent, so grateful for that. He said, the intrusive thoughts, the OCD, it controls my life, and I don't know that I'll ever escape it. Well, guess how many friends I heard back from out of the 15 who said, yeah, I got that too. Or a close relative struggles with those intrusive thoughts too. Four people that were willing to go, yeah, I know exactly what that guy is dealing with. In fact, one of them was that exact same issue that this man had, which was a fear that he's going to run somebody over with his car. And it controls him. I heard from somebody who said, yeah, I know what that's like. That is a reminder. Folks are struggling with a lot. OCD, anxiety, depression, anger issues, a lustful mind that can never seem to be satisfied. All spiritual battles that everybody is having. What does that have to do with reclining into the sovereignty of God? I think with specifically with OCD, it's extremely helpful. You just can't walk away from a situation without doing it over and over and over and over again, repetitively, because you fear you've done it wrong, even though your senses go, yep, did it. How's about stopping? Lord, you've given me my senses. I can translate what's going on. I believe that I have done what I'm supposed to do in this situation, and now I am going to rest in you. I'm going to trust you for the outcome, whatever it happens to be. Because what God ordains is always good. Always. Dr. Jason Lyle helping us to witness effectively by dealing with some of those rascally, hey, what about this?
Somebody says, we know evolution is a fact because bacteria have evolved resistance to antibiotics. This is an equivocation fallacy, the fallacy of shifting the meaning of the word. The word that shifts meaning is the word evolve or evolution, which can just mean change in a generic sense. Well, we all agree things change. There's no doubt about that. Animals today are not exactly the same as they were at creation, right? But that doesn't mean they've evolved in the sense of from a common ancestor. They've remained the same kinds. Dogs have always been dogs and will always be dogs. And so the fact that you see things change doesn't, in a generic sense, does not prove a specific type of change, the Darwinian type. So this is, again, equivocation fallacy because you're using the same word in two different senses. I know evolution's true, by which they mean Darwinian evolution, because we see evolution in the sense of dogs becoming different breeds of dogs. Two different things. Two different things. Don't fall for that.
It's an equivocation fallacy, but there are more that we can be on the alert for.
Here's one. Creationists do not believe that animals change at all. That's an example of a straw man fallacy, right? That's where you misrepresent the position of your opponent and then show how easy it is to knock down that silly position. Because it's easy to show that animals change. They're not identical to their ancestors. We know that. You can get different species. You can get speciation. But that's not what creationists teach. That's a misrepresentation of what creationists teach. We do believe animals change within kinds. We don't think that lizards become birds. But we do agree with speciation and different breeds and different breeds of dogs. See, a straw man fallacy, you misrepresent your opponent. You show how easy it is to refute that ridiculous position. But if he were up against an actual creationist and what we actually taught, he might find that more difficult to refute.
Seems like we should mention Answers in Genesis at this moment.
Somebody says, you're just a Christian because you were raised in a Christian home. If you were raised by Muslims, you'd probably be Muslim. Now that's interesting because there's some truth to that. And a lot of Christians find that difficult to refute. But if you know something about logic, you realize it is a fallacy. That's called a circumstantial ad hominem fallacy. A circumstantial ad hominem is where you dodge the argument by pointing out the person's circumstances or motivations. So somebody who said, well, you're just for higher gasoline prices because you work at a gas station. You'll get paid more. That may be true, but that doesn't mean his argument's false. He might have made a really good argument for higher gas prices. I don't know what it would be, but hypothetically. Just because you're motivated to argue for a position doesn't mean your position is wrong. Just because you've been blessed by parents who taught you the truth doesn't mean it's not the truth, does it? Really, this objection is like saying, well, you just believe in the multiplication table because you were taught it in school. Now, it is true that I believe in the multiplication table and I was taught it in school, but that doesn't mean I don't have some really good reasons to continue to believe in the multiplication table, like it works, right? So the fact that I've come to believe something in a particular way has no bearing on my argument for that particular thing, none whatsoever. It is true that I'm very grateful. I was brought up in a Christian home, and that certainly helped. But that doesn't mean that Christianity is false. Not at all. It's a circumstantial ad hominem. A person's motivations or circumstances for making the argument are utterly irrelevant to the validity of the argument. Utterly irrelevant. But you can see how people would be fooled by that, because there's some truth in the statement. It just doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove that Christianity is false, or even that it's less likely to be true.
No, sirree, Bob. It doesn't affect the object of the faith. The understanding of the one who believes it, the zip code in which they were born, entirely irrelevant to the argument. Now, it could be that they are a follower of it because they were born into the system and they just continue to swim there, but that has nothing to do with the credibility of the object of one's faith. It's yet another logical fallacy which you and I would do well to identify, and might I suggest there's only one way that we can likely do that because we're not as snappy as Jason Lyle. When we're in a witness encounter and listen, we need to really, really listen and think. This is Wretched Radio. I'll be needing to see some identification, young man.
Why?
Because you, my friend, are a lawbreaker.
No, I'm not.
You are, according to this video from Ray Comfort. Production. I need the clips on time.
911, what's your emergency?
We met about
Yeah, he asked me to
this.
become a gospel partner, and he took my credit card.